Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a fascinating comparison that you sent our way. Yhwach from Bleach, and Jesus Christ, I know what you might be thinking. One's an anime villain with a seriously epic mustache, and the other is, well, the Son of God. How can you even compare them? But trust me, the parallels are surprisingly thought-provoking. I'm your host, by the way, and I cannot wait to unpack this with our expert.
I am excited to dive in. You've provided us with some really intriguing philosophical and theological analysis, and while we won't be debating religious doctrine, we'll definitely be exploring the ideas and themes surrounding these figures.
Exactly. So let's start with the basics. Both Yhwach and Jesus are depicted as having extraordinary origins. Yhwach, the main antagonist in Bleach, is born with unique powers, making him revered as a god among the Quincy. Think of them as a kind of spiritual warrior clan.
And Jesus, in Christian theology,
Okay.
is the Son of God. So both figures have this divine aspect that sets them apart right from the start. But what's fascinating is how this shared divine origin plays out in their actions, and ultimately their contrasting approaches to power.
Okay, let's unpack that. We see both Yhwach and Jesus associated with healing,
hmm
but their methods are fundamentally different. In Bleach, Yhwach can heal by sharing his power, but it's more like a temporary loan, some seriously steep interest.
That's a great way to put it. Those who are healed by Yhwach eventually return their life force to him, resulting in their death. It's a pretty stark contrast to the unconditional healing we see from Jesus.
Right, like in the story of the woman who was healed just by touching Jesus' garment. Pure grace, no strings attached. It seems to suggest a very different understanding of power. Yhwach's power is almost transactional, tied to a cycle of giving and taking, ultimately ending in death.
Exactly. And this difference in their approach to healing really underscores the broader contrast in their overall philosophies.
Let's talk about that. Both Yhwach and Jesus strive for a kind of unity, but their methods and the end results they envision couldn't be more different. Yhwach's goal is to obliterate the boundaries between life and death, merging everything into a single existence under his control.
It's a world where suffering and individuality are completely erased. Now, on the surface, this vision might sound similar to certain interpretations of Revelation in the Bible, where there's a promise of a world without pain.
Right, the idea of heaven. But the key difference lies in how they achieve this unity, right?
Absolutely. Jesus' vision, as presented in the Gospels, is rooted in faith, love, and redemption. It's about offering a choice, a path to unity with God based on free will and love, not coercion.
Whereas Yhwach is more like everyone will be unified, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
This really comes through in his absorption of the Soul King, this enigmatic being who maintains the balance of the entire world in Bleach.
Right, it's a blatant display of force, dismantling the existing order to impose his own vision. Yhwach believes his version of unity trumps every other system, and he's willing to tear down everything to achieve it.
It's a very my way or the highway approach,
Yeah.
but with a lot more cosmic stakes. And this brings us to another interesting point of comparison. Sacrifice. Both Yhwach and Jesus are connected to this idea. But again, their motivations and actions are worlds apart.
Absolutely. Jesus' sacrifice on the cross is presented as the ultimate act of selflessness, willingly taking on the sins of humanity to offer redemption. It's about love and atonement.
Then we have Yhwach, whose sacrifices are, well, let's just say they have a very different flavor. His followers, even those he elevates, are essentially tools to be used and discarded as needed.
A perfect example of this is during the Thousand-Year Blood War in Bleach, where Yhwach reclaims the lives and powers of his Sternritter, his elite Quincy warriors, without a second thought. He justifies their deaths as necessary for his survival and the fulfillment of his vision.
It's chilling, really. This idea that individuals are expendable in the pursuit of a grand vision, no matter how noble it might seem. This brings us to their roles as judges. Yhwach, with his almighty power, becomes an absolute judge, seeing all possible futures and manipulating them to his liking. He's playing chess with the entire universe, and he's always 10 moves ahead.
It's a powerful image, and it raises some pretty unsettling questions about free will and determinism. If Yhwach decides you're going to be annihilated, then resistance is futile.
Right, there's no mercy, no second chances. We see this in his treatment of Iryu and Ichigo, two key characters who resist him.
This lack of mercy stands in stark contrast to Jesus, whose teachings emphasize forgiveness and redemption. Think of the parable of the prodigal son, where the father welcomes back his wayward son with open arms, no questions asked. It's about offering a path back, recognizing that people can change, and that even in the face of great wrongdoing, there's always a chance for redemption.
It's a message of hope and compassion, a belief in the inherent goodness of humanity. even when they mess up. Which leads us to another interesting parallel. Both figures are associated with light. But the nature of that light differs significantly. Yhwach's light is all about power, control, and knowing everything that's going to happen.
It's almost blinding, leaving no room for alternate paths or choices. It reflects Yhwach's desire to impose his vision of the future on everyone.
Now, contrast that with Jesus, who is described as the light of the world. His light is about revealing truth and offering guidance. But it doesn't force a single path or outcome. It illuminates the way without dictating the destination.
And this difference in their light really speaks volumes about their contrasting approaches to knowledge, power, and even the very concept of truth. Yhwach's truth is absolute, while Jesus is about seeking, understanding, and ultimately
choosing.
It's fascinating how two figures who seem so different on the surface can offer such rich insights into these fundamental human questions. We've covered a lot of ground here. Healing, unity, sacrifice, judgment, light. But there's one more theme we need to touch on. Betrayal.
Yes, betrayal plays a key role in both narratives, and offers another interesting lens through which to compare these two figures. For Yhwach, there's Buryu, his Quincy follower who eventually betrays him, recognizing the destructiveness of Yhwach's vision. Right, and for Jesus, there's the ultimate betrayal, Judas Iscariot handing him over to the authorities, leading to his crucifixion. But it's their responses to betrayal that really highlight the chasm between their philosophies. Jesus, even as he's being betrayed, shows compassion and forgiveness.
It's a truly remarkable moment. There's a sense of profound sadness, but no anger or desire for revenge. It speaks volumes about his belief in the possibility of redemption, even for those who have wronged him.
Yhwach, on the other hand, doesn't handle betrayal so well. He sees it as a direct challenge to his authority, an unforgivable offense. His response is wrath and punishment, asserting his dominance and crushing dissent.
Which again underscores that fundamental difference. Jesus sees potential for good even in those who have done wrong. While Yhwach sees only defiance and a need for absolute control, their contrasting views on betrayal offer a powerful insight into their understanding of human nature.
So we've explored a lot of parallels between Yhwach and Jesus. But there's one thing I haven't mentioned yet, the mustache. Seriously, that guy can rock some facial hair. It's like a perfectly sculpted work of art, a symbol of his power and authority.
You're not wrong. It's definitely become an iconic part of his character design.
I'm a little jealous, to be honest. I've tried to grow a mustache like that.
Yeah.
But it just ends up looking like a sad caterpillar.
Yeah.
But hey, maybe that's part of what makes Yhwach so fascinating. He's got the power, the vision, and the facial hair to match.
Well, we can't all be blessed with such magnificent mustaches, but we can certainly learn from Yhwach's story, even if we can't replicate his grooming skills.
Exactly. So as we move into the next part of our deep dive, let's keep that mustache envy in check and focus on the bigger picture. What are some key takeaways from this comparison? How do these contrasting approaches to power, unity, and even facial hair challenge our own understanding of leadership and the choices we make?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore further after a quick break. We'll be right back with more insights from your deep dive into Yhwach and Jesus.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before we went on, we were discussing the interesting parallels between Yhwach from Bleach and Jesus Christ, and you were expressing some serious mustache envy.
Hey, can you blame me? That guy's facial hair is legendary. But you're right, we've got some fascinating ground to cover still. We were just about to delve into some key takeaways from comparing these two figures. What really struck you as we were unpacking their contrasting approaches to power and leadership?
What's fascinating is how their journeys reflect different paths to power and influence. You provided us with some analysis that suggests Yhwach's power grows alongside his mustache. It's almost like a visual representation of his increasing dominance and control.
It's true. As his mustache gets more epic, so does his power. It starts as this subtle thing, almost unnoticeable. But over time, it becomes this bold statement, impossible to ignore. Just like Yhwach himself. Exactly. And it's not just about aesthetics. As his mustache grows, so does his willingness to use force, to impose his will upon others. We see this in his transformation from a seemingly benevolent leader to a ruthless tyrant, willing to sacrifice anything and anyone to achieve his goals.
It's a stark contrast to Jesus, whose power seems to stem from a different source entirely. It's not about outward appearances or displays of force, but about something deeper, something more internal.
Absolutely. Jesus' power is rooted in love, compassion, and a profound understanding of the human condition. He doesn't need a magnificent mustache or an army of followers to exert influence. His message resonates because it speaks to something fundamental within us, a longing for connection, for meaning, for something beyond ourselves.
It's a powerful reminder that true leadership isn't about dominating others, but about inspiring them, about appealing to their better nature. And sometimes that means making sacrifices, not for personal gain, but for the greater good.
Right. We see this in Jesus' willingness to sacrifice himself for the redemption of humanity. It's the ultimate act of selflessness, a testament to his unwavering belief in love and forgiveness.
And then we have Yhwach, who views sacrifice as a means to an end. He demands loyalty from his followers, but ultimately sees them as expendable in his pursuit of absolute power.
It's a chilling reminder that power, even when coupled with good intentions, can corrupt. And it raises some important questions for us. What kind of leaders do we want to be? What are we willing to sacrifice for the sake of our goals? And are there lines we should never cross, no matter how noble our intentions may seem?
Those are heavy questions, and they really get to the heart of what makes this comparison so fascinating. Yhwach and Jesus represent two very different paths to power and two very different visions of the world.
And by examining their choices, their motivations, and even their facial hair, we can gain a deeper understanding of our own values, our own aspirations, and the kind of impact we want to have on the world.
It's a powerful reminder that even fictional characters can teach us valuable lessons about leadership, sacrifice, and the nature of power. And hey, maybe we can even pick up a few grooming tips along the way.
Well, maybe not all of us, but I appreciate your enthusiasm.
What can I say? I'm a sucker for a good mustache. But speaking of suckers, Yhwach's followers, the Quincy, are a fascinating bunch. They're so devoted to him, willing to follow him to the ends of the earth, even when his actions become increasingly destructive.
It's true, and it raises the question, what is it about Yhwach that inspires such fervent loyalty, even in the face of his tyranny?
Well, part of it might be his charisma, his undeniable power, and that awe-inspiring mustache, but I think it goes deeper than that. The Quincy have a long history of persecution and marginalization. They see Yhwach as a savior, someone who will finally restore them to their rightful place in the world.
That's a great point. Their loyalty is rooted in a shared sense of identity, a belief in Yhwach's vision for their future, and that makes his betrayal of them all the more tragic.
Absolutely. When he starts sacrificing his own followers to fuel his power, it's a devastating blow to their faith. And it highlights the danger of blindly following any leader, no matter how charismatic or powerful they may seem.
Right. It's a reminder that we need to think critically about the leaders we choose to follow, to question their motives, and to be willing to stand up for what we believe in, even if it means challenging authority.
It's a message that resonates deeply, even beyond the fantastical world of Bleach. We see it play out in history, in politics, and even in our own personal lives.
Exactly. The struggle between individual conscience and blind loyalty is a timeless theme, one that's as relevant today as it ever was. And it's something we all need to grapple with as we navigate the complexities of power, leadership, and the choices we make.
So as we move forward in our deep dive, let's keep this in mind. Even the most devoted followers have a responsibility to think for themselves, to question authority, and to hold their leaders accountable.
And perhaps to be a little less envious of their impressive facial hair.
Okay, I'll try. But no promises. Seriously, though, this discussion has been eye-opening. It's amazing how two figures as seemingly different as Yhwach and Jesus can offer such profound insights into the nature of power, leadership, and the choices we make.
Absolutely. And it's a testament to the power of storytelling to illuminate these timeless themes and to spark meaningful conversations. But we're not done yet. We still have more to unpack, more parallels to explore, and more insights to uncover.
You're right. We've talked about their different approaches to power, sacrifice, and leadership, but we haven't even touched on their views on judgment, redemption, and the ultimate meaning of life.
And let's not forget about that epic mustache. We need to dedicate some more time to appreciating its sheer magnificence.
Okay, maybe we can squeeze in a little more mustache admiration, but let's try to stay focused on the bigger picture. We've got a lot more ground to cover in our deep dive into Yhwach and Jesus. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on quite a journey, exploring the fascinating parallels between Yhwach from Bleach and Jesus Christ. We've talked about their contrasting approaches to power, leadership, sacrifice, and even facial hair.
You've been very enthusiastic about that mustache.
What can I say? I'm a man of simple pleasures. But seriously, this comparison has raised some profound questions about the nature of good and evil, the choices we make, and the kind of world we want to live in.
Absolutely. And as we delve into the final part of our deep dive, I think it's important to bring it back to you, the listener. What resonates with you most from this comparison?
That's a great point. This isn't just an academic exercise. It's about using these contrasting figures as a lens to examine our own values, beliefs, and the choices we make in our own lives.
Exactly. So let's think about their approaches to judgment and redemption. Yhwach, with his ability to see all possible futures, becomes this absolute judge, deciding fates with seemingly no room for appeal. There's a sense of inevitability about his pronouncements, a lack of mercy that's pretty unsettling.
Right. If Yhwach decides your time is up, that's it. No second chances. No opportunity for redemption. It's a pretty stark contrast to the message of forgiveness and hope we see in Jesus' teachings.
Absolutely. Think about the parable of the prodigal son. It's a beautiful story about a father who welcomes back his wayward son with open arms, no judgment passed. It's about recognizing that people make mistakes, that they can change, and that everyone deserves a chance for redemption.
It's a powerful message and makes you wonder, what would it be like to live in a world ruled by Yhwach's absolute judgment versus a world where forgiveness and second chances are possible?
It's a thought-provoking question. Yhwach's world might seem appealing at first. No more crime, no more suffering, everything perfectly ordered and controlled.
But at what cost? Would we be willing to sacrifice our freedom, our individuality, our very capacity for growth and change, for the sake of such a world?
That's the crux of the dilemma, isn't it? Security versus freedom, control versus choice. It's a tension that's woven throughout human history, and it's something we all have to grapple with on a personal level.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how these two contrasting figures, Yhwach and Jesus, embody these different approaches to life, to power, to the very nature of existence. Yhwach represents the desire for control, for order, for a world free from suffering, even if it means sacrificing individual freedom.
And Jesus represents a path of love, forgiveness, and redemption, a belief in the inherent goodness of humanity and the power of choice.
It's not about choosing one over the other,
Yeah.
but about recognizing the complexities of both and using them to inform our own journeys. What kind of world do we want to create? What sacrifices are we willing to make? And how do we balance the desire for security with the need for freedom?
These are big questions, and there's no easy answers, but I think that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. It challenges us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to engage in meaningful dialogue about the values that shape our lives.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our exploration of Yhwach and Jesus. What an incredible journey it's been.
It certainly has, and I hope you, the listener, have come away with a renewed sense of curiosity, a deeper understanding of these contrasting figures, and perhaps even a few questions of your own to ponder.
And maybe, just maybe, a newfound appreciation for the power of a well-groomed mustache. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.